and welcome to Fifth Gear. Today, I've got the key to £200,000 worth of cutting-edge British technology. The 12C Spyder is the brand new drop-top version of McLaren's hypercar.
It's noisy now!
I'll find out from the company's chief test driver why they reckon it's a Ferrari killer, before taking it to the limit to see if he's right.
I'm not sure. I'm fully in control.
Jonny's given unprecedented access to the secret world of 21st century crash testing,
Jesus creepers,
before staging a spectacular van versus car head-on smash to reveal which vehicle is safest. In our team test, we find out if the brand new Volkswagen Golf is still the ultimate family hatchback. Plus, Jason and Finnish double world rally champion Marcus Gronholm pit two brand new Porsche Caymans head-to-head in an automatic versus manual gearbox battle.
I have to catch him.
First, the convertible version of the most exciting British hypercar this century. The McLaren 12C Spyder.
I'm finding the limit very quickly.
This car and I have history. Our first test of the coupe version in 2011 caused a storm at McLaren HQ. The car fell well short of its major rival, the Ferrari 458 Italia. Jason and I found it to be inconsistent and unstable at the limit.
I don't know when the last time I spun a car was. It's quite some time ago.
Whoa, whoa.
And it spat me off the track.
We're off.
McLaren, who are renowned perfectionists, have since reworked the coupe and brand new Spyder to be faster and more stable than before. To get the inside line on what's new, I've invited along their chief test driver, British racer Chris Goodwin. He counts Jenson Button as a colleague and knows the car inside out. How does this differ from the coupe?
Well, first, an obvious difference is it has a retractable hardtop.
But also, when you introduced the Spyder, you introduced more power with the engine.
Yeah, 625 PS now on this car. When we launched the Spyder, we introduced the new engine calibration for more power, but also more drivability.
Now, onto the bigger issue of high-speed handling. Compared to the beautifully balanced Ferrari, I found the original car to be unpredictable. Its built-in stability systems interfered with my driving, and I ended up in the grass. McLaren have recalibrated the 12C's electronics and claim it's now more predictable. So I've asked Chris to prove it.
We'll do that without a spin.
Even though conditions are very slippery.
Do you understand what we were trying to say? That we just felt we were never fully in control. It wasn't consistent.
What you felt when you drove the coupe originally was what we've improved now, which is much more refined throttle control.
You've taken the power away from me when I wanted it.
Yeah, so you get into a certain degree of yaw and the torque would start to drift away.
Yeah.
Which was when you actually wanted it to actually increase.
I was correcting it and it was correcting itself, so we were both correcting the same thing.
So now you can just power your way out of a corner like that and the torque and power keeps going.
Oh yeah, no, that's more like it, Chris. I think it's time for me to have a go now. You've had your fun.
Full credit to McLaren for admitting their car wasn't quite perfect and doing something about it. From the passenger seat, it does feel like a very different car. But what about from behind the wheel? It's time for me versus McLaren, round 2.
But before I do get started, there's one thing I do need to talk about that hasn't been changed, and that's Lewis Hamilton's famous steering wheel molded to his grip. But unfortunately, it's got like 3 different textures. It's round and lumpy here, it's thin and sharp at the top, and it's all squared off at the bottom. And it just doesn't give me the feel that I want of a steering wheel. Of course, feel is what this car is all about. Neither Jason nor I liked its feel when we took it right to the limit before. And that's what hopefully has been changed and what I'm about to find out. It's turning, it's pointing, I'm finding the limit very quickly. This is feeling a much more sorted car. I can build some confidence, get into that throttle. Plenty of grip still there in reserve. It's bringing a much bigger smile on my face than it did before, that's for sure.
The Coupe and Spyder now have programmable exhaust notes. Mclaren have even specifically tuned the convertible to sound good with the roof down. Job done. Although it's still not Ferrari good. McLaren's fastidious approach has even spread to the interior. The climate control now works more quickly and quietly. The seats have been redesigned. The headlights now automatically switch on when it rains. Even the hi-fi has been tweaked. This is more modern and easier to use than the 458's interior. But what's most important to me is whether or not I can make this revised 12C power slide. Is it now more controllable?
Try and give it some kick in this hairpin. Oh, oh. Everything's going to hold. Oh, still not trusting it right on the limit. Now, let's see if I can go that bit further. Give it the flick. Hold it, hold it, hold, hold, hold. And yes, you can now drift a Mclaren. Perhaps not as easily still as the Ferrari. I'm not quite so confident as trying to stick it sideways and fire it out of a corner. It's still a little bit of deadness there, just when I go sideways. There. I'm not sure I'm fully in control. And when you're sitting in £250,000, you want to be in control. And by the way, McLaren, Lewis is gone. Change the steering wheel.
The 12C is faster, more exciting, better sounding. And the Spyder version makes it more glamorous than ever. But is it enough? So to the big question, is the McLaren 12C now a match for its great nemesis, the Ferrari 458? Well, it's never going to sound quite as good with its turbocharged engine against the normally aspirated Ferrari, and it's still just a little bit too nervous when you're right on the limit. But there's no doubt the McLaren is now a much improved machine.
Okay, this is it.
Still to come, Jonny witnesses the destruction of cutting-edge crash testing. And it's Cayman versus Cayman with Finnish rally legend Marcus Gronholm.
Yes! Welcome back to Fifth Gear. Jonny's revealing the mind-boggling technology behind the crash test ratings of brand new cars.
Euro NCAP, or the European New Car Assessment Programme, is the organisation that tells us exactly how safe new cars are. They've been crashing and analysing cars since 1997, publishing their findings so that folk like us can choose the safest possible chariot for our families.
Today I've been given unprecedented behind-the-scenes access to an official crash test. I'm going to see the technology and the equipment involved, and I'm going to watch this brand new Honda CRV face a pretty grim, pretty messy death. But first, let's look at the bigger picture.
Before a car can go on sale, it has to pass crash tests as part of the European Whole Vehicle Type Approval process. But as they're a simple pass or fail, buyers can't use them to find out if one car is safer than another. That's where Euro NCAP comes in. Their tests are tougher, and instead of a pass or a fail, they publish star ratings alongside marks that reveal the ability of a car to protect occupants, pedestrians and children.
These tests, they're actually voluntary, but they're so crucial in proving a car's safety record, that all the big car manufacturers take part. Today, Honda has donated this CRV for Euro NCAP to crash for them, knowing full well that if it scores well, it's going to help appeal to more buyers and sell more cars. So today is a pretty big deal.
The CRV, which is built in the UK, is being tested at Thatcham in England, one of several NCAP facilities across Europe. Each car is put through 3 different tests: a side impact, a pole impact, and, like today's test of the CRV, a frontal impact. Alex Thompson and his team have spent a week preparing the car.
It's a 60-40 offset front impact at 40 miles an hour, so 40% of the front of the car is actually hitting the deformable barrier.
This represents the front of another car.
This is, yeah, it's made from an aluminium honeycomb, so it's got a certain amount of crush strength in one direction.
The front impact test uses 4 crash test dummies, 2 adults, 2 children. They look pretty basic, but this set is worth around 300,000 quid.
They've got an awful lot of instrumentation inside them that tells us a lot of things about how an occupant would have fared in one of the crash tests.
I was looking at the shoes of the dummies earlier, but the sort of shoes you get given if you went to prison. Apparently these are set by the industry. You have to wear these shoes, you have to give these shoes to the dummies, and they're apparently really expensive.
The sensors in each car record up to 20,000 data samples per second.
For this test we have, I think, about 104 channels of data to tell us how the car has decelerated, how the seatbelts, the force that's been put through the seatbelts during the crash.
Yeah.
The dummies are so sensitive, we have to wait for the test lab to reach the right temperature before the crash can take place.
The reason why he's got white tape on his face and all the other faces is because they're going to paint some makeup on all of the dummies, so that when the airbags are deployed at the front here, you can see exactly where the face is coming into contact with the bag. You can just track where it's all been. So this is the last thing before Doomsday?
Pretty much.
It's now time to decide just how safe a new Honda CRV really is. The car will be propelled by an electric winch at exactly 40 miles per hour.
10 seconds.
This is the first time Euro NCAP have allowed a TV crew behind the scenes of their work. So, you're in for a bit of a treat.
Okay, this is it. Jesus creepers. I'm going to go and have a look. Should we go and have a look? Let's go and have a look. We're off to open the doors of the car, because one of the most important things post-accident is to make sure that you can get in and out of the car, that the doors operate as they should. Alex is going to open the driver's door, which is obviously taking the brunt of the impact.
43.4.
The carnage has generated over 50 gigabytes of data that's downloaded from the car and sent to the Euro NCAP headquarters in Brussels for analysis.
I'm not going to touch it because it's a sort of scene of scientific investigation, but you can see where the shins have touched the glove compartment. And you see the airbag, the driver's airbag there? It's a pretty good view of where the eyebrows, the nose bridge and the chin have touched.
Aled Williams is going to tell me what this mess means.
So if we look here, for example, the front end, of course, is pretty stoved in.
Yep.
There's a big member here, which has obviously absorbed a lot of energy.
Yep.
So that's done okay. But the really important thing, I would say, is to look at the passenger compartment. You can see that there's very little deformation of this passenger compartment. So this part here has moved rearwards very little.
Yep.
This has maintained its shape. From what we can see, the airbags seem to have deployed correctly during the impact.
Yeah.
15, 16 years ago, this would have really folded up. Now, you can see that it's really held its shape extremely well. So the whole passenger compartment is virtually intact.
After 8 weeks of forensically analysing this crash and the others it went through, Euro NCAP delivered their verdict on the CRV. It was awarded a maximum possible score of 5 stars, with high marks for occupant protection, though some room for improvement on pedestrian care. Seeing such destructive forces is always shocking, but this level of analysis is also massively reassuring. Carnage like this is created purely to ensure the cars we buy are as safe as possible.
Next, over to our high-tech test facility for the 5th gear team test. Today, the team tested the new Volkswagen Golf. It's the 7th generation of Volkswagen's iconic family hatch. It costs from £16,000 to £29,000, and Volkswagen say it's lighter, safer, more advanced, more spacious, more efficient, and better equipped than ever before. We're testing the best-selling model, a 1.6 turbo diesel costing £20,500.
Milestone news, everybody.
What is it?
You know it's a Golf, right? They've been making it for 38 years, which is more than I thought. But do you know how many they've made and sold? 29 million.
But you know, I think it looks the most unlike a Golf than any Golf that has gone before. It just looks like any other European hatchback.
A new model should look new. Oh dear, the new Golf. Nothing special.
If I was your neighbour, say, perish the thought. and I pulled up outside your house and I'd had a Mark 6 Golf, and I just bought this in the same colour.
Yeah.
I bet you would never know that I've just bought a brand new Golf.
It's a bit kind of boring old cheddar cheese. It doesn't really get my pulse going.
I think the Mark 5 was the sweetest spot of the recent Golfs.
Would we stop this Golf history lessons and talk about the new car?
Okay, all right,
which has, as standard, the don't crash into the back of the car in front.
Radar thing.
Yeah, standard across the range. On the inside, especially sitting in the back, there really was very little to see in the new Golf, apart from lots of grey and grey and grey.
Watch your toes, I'm going down.
No, you're crashing my ankles now.
Do you know the thing? Golfs have always been brilliant, largely.
Yeah.
So all they're doing is they're the king of the hatch. They're just refining everything by 1% here, 2% there.
But it comes at the detriment of it being a bit boring, really.
The car redeemed itself when it came to the driving because I had a whale of a time.
I think it feels quite sprightly.
Yeah, it handles really well.
Actually, the drive was pretty good. You know, it's a 1.6 turbo diesel. It was reasonably good fun, actually.
It changes direction really nicely.
I'm quite impressed, actually. I quite like it.
I'm very impressed. Oh, thankfully. It was great.
Now, of course, the big thing about Golfs is that they've got a great reputation for that build quality. So we thought we ought to test this.
So we decided to pitch it up against its main rival, the Ford Focus, and use some ohmmeters to test it.
This is a paint thickness ohmmeter, so it measures the thickness of the paint across the car without me having to strip it off. Clever. I'm going to measure the most vulnerable part of the car, which is really the leading edge of the bonnet, which gets all the stone chip abuse. I'm going to measure the Golf, and then Tiff's going to measure the Focus. Here goes. 169.
We've got 100,
148.
120,
173.
99. So, thinner paint on the Ford.
The tighter the panel gaps on a car, the better the perceived quality of the car is. So we used a micrometer to measure said gaps.
Wheel that in there. 4.18.
We start with a 3.66.
4.01.
Or 3.2, right down at the bottom.
Pretty much 4 mil.
And actually, the Focus came out as having slightly tighter gaps than the Golf.
What surprised us is just how close the Focus is to the Golf. Overall, the Volkswagen is slightly more refined, but as it costs an extra £1,500, we were expecting more.
Sorry, Volkswagen, but the new Golf just isn't new enough. And I'll only give it 7.
I'm going to give it a vanilla 7.
The Golf isn't great to look at from the outside and it's a bit sober on the inside. Fortunately, though, it is fun to drive, so I am going to give it a score of 7.
The Golf. Bit harsh, but 7 out of 10.
Which gives the Volkswagen Golf a team test score of 28 out of 40.
If you can't afford the £195,000 McLaren 12C Spyder but want some of the roof-down excitement, fear not. I've got 3 cheapskate alternatives. Topless thrills, mid-engined poise and an exciting sense of speed. These are the best beer money substitutes to the McLaren that Tiff was thrashing earlier on. And instead of costing nearly £200,000, these cheeky pups start at just £2,000. I'll begin with the most affordable, the Mark III Toyota MR2. These perky roadsters cost from £17,000 when new, but are now just a couple of grand. I know you might be thinking that this is a hairdresser's car, but the handling is so good, an engine so fizzy that those words should not be applied to the MR2. This is such a great entry-level sports car. Everything is very manageable in it. It's got enough power to make you happy. The chassis is fantastic. The gearbox is an utter delight. Exactly what you need. The MR2 is massively reliable, but not perfect. One issue is a dodgy pre-cat, which can cause engine damage. The symptom is a smoky exhaust. If you're lucky, you can just remove the pre-cat. If you're unlucky, you'll have a high bill for an engine rebuild. The MR2 is a gem of a car. My next drop top is a car that may have snuck under your radar, the smart Brabus Roadster. These cost from £17,000 when new, but are now an unbelievable £5,000. This car looks like it's come straight from a toy shop, and it is one of the most fun cars to drive. It's powered by a 700cc turbocharged engine, which gets to 62 in about 9.5 seconds. But the best bit is that you'll get around 53 mpg if you're careful with the throttle. We reckon these are future classics, so should hold their value really well. A word of warning though, they can be a bit leaky through the bulkhead, so check the carpets and the seats for any sign of damp. And worst case scenario is that water will get through to the ECU in here, and that will cost £700 to replace. Next up, the wheels. They aren't known for being particularly strong, so check for any cracks or dents, and it's probably best to do this before you take it for a test drive. A replacement wheel can cost up to £350. The smart Brabus Roadster is a peach, but spend £7,000 more and you can get one of the most famous badges in motoring, Lotus. The brilliant Series 2 Elise can be yours for just £12,000. When this car first came out, I absolutely fell in love with it. And now, 13 years later, I'm still just as much in love with it. There's no slack in the steering and zero body roll. It's just you and the chassis. It's fantastic. The 111S has a 1.8-litre Rover-based engine, getting it from 0 to 62 miles an hour in just 5.2 seconds. Lotuses don't have a reputation for reliability, so pay attention if you want to avoid trouble. The K-Series engine has a reputation for blowing head gaskets, but don't worry too much because most of them should have been replaced with stronger parts by now. However, do check underneath the oil filler cap for any telltale signs of white gunk. But something even more expensive lurks underneath. The aluminium chassis is expensive to repair, so check carefully for any signs of accident damage, especially around the wishbone mounts and underneath the sill all the way along here. With my tips in mind, you could have some of the McLaren's drop-top fun for a fraction of the price.
Still to come, Jonny reveals the technology that could save you a serious pain in the neck and conducts a brutal crash test of his own. Plus, it's Cayman versus Cayman with double World Rally Champion Marcus Gronholm.
Yeah, tell you what, he knows how to drive a car, does that lad?
Welcome back to Fifth Gear, where it's time to rejoin Jonny, who's looking into the biggest issue in car safety right now, whiplash.
We've already witnessed a Euro NCAP crash firsthand and seen how the gigabytes of data have led to a Honda CRV being awarded a 5-star rating. Next, I want to look into a car safety subject that affects every single one of us.
It's time to talk whiplash, the most common injury sustained from a car accident.
It's defined as a sudden strain to the bones or muscles of the neck.
1,500 people every day make an insurance claim for whiplash injury, and that costs the insurance industry as a whole £2 billion every year.
Recently, there's been an explosion in legal firms specialising in providing compensation for the potential victims of whiplash. Reported cases have risen by a quarter in the last 4 years, despite a drop in the number of road accidents.
Look, I'm not here to moan about those companies and their cold calling. I'm here to reveal the test that Euro NCAP conduct in order to measure how cars can protect us from whiplash. I'll also tell you which of the brand new cars are best at preventing it and what you can do with your own car to make it a bit more whiplash proof.
The biggest factor in a car's ability to protect its driver from neck injury is the design of the seat itself. So Euro NCAP has developed a sled on which to test the seats of all new cars.
This is the whiplash room.
That's right.
And you are Mr. Whiplash, correct?
I'm responsible for all the work that we do with whiplash testing, and whiplash is not a severe injury, but it's a very, very common injury. In fact, it's the most common injury in all vehicle crashes.
The first thing that surprises me is you haven't actually got a full car.
No, we don't need to, because, of course, whiplash protection really comes just from the seat and the head restraint. So the seat is the most important thing. So what we can do is we can just take the seat and put it on this special sled. And further down, there's a hydraulic ram, and this sled is able to move on rails. Right, and by accelerating it very quickly, by the hydraulic ram pushing it forward, we can really analyse just the seat and not the car.
Whiplash almost always occurs during a rear-end collision caused by G-forces throwing the head violently backwards and then forwards.
This is all about seat technology, isn't it? There's no other part of the car really that can stop your neck from getting whiplash.
Well, the seat has got to absorb the energy of the crash and support the head. So what you see here is it's got two things. It's got a head restraint that's very tall, as high as the top of the occupant's head, and it's very close, which is very, very good. If you support the head,
yep,
you prevent the injury.
Yep.
The second thing is that this particular seat has down here got a trick mechanism that absorbs the energy of the crash. So in the crash, you're pushed along maybe at 10G, but because this absorbs energy, only maybe 7G is passed on to the occupant and reduces whiplash injury by, with this particular seat, something like 40%.
So this is like a shock absorber, basically, in there?
That's right. And it's a very simple mechanism that can be replaced immediately after the crash.
There's a clear leaderboard when it comes to neck protection. Pay attention if you want to buy the best. The best Super Mini is the Hyundai i20 with a score of 3.5 out of 5. The best hatch is a Vauxhall Astra. The best MPV is the Ford C-Max. The best SUV is the Skoda Yeti, and the best big saloon is the Hyundai i40. The Honda CRV we saw crash earlier scored an excellent overall safety rating of 5 stars and a good whiplash score of 3.4 out of 5.
So, we now know how whiplash is tested and we know which brand new cars are best at preventing it. But what can we do to protect ourselves from it in our own cars? Let's get in the crew vehicle and have a look. OK. First of all, don't recline your seat too much. You might think you're a rude boy by putting this right back, but if it's back by more than 20 degrees, it maximises the distance between the back of your head and the headrest, which means in an incident, in a shunt, you're more likely to get a strain. Secondly, think about the height of your headrest. What you're supposed to do is have the headrest top in line with the top of your head. About like that. Thirdly, if your headrest adjusts forwards and backwards, try and bring it out to meet the back of your head as much as possible. If it's a small gap where your head's resting on it, it will absorb the impact and there'll be less whip. It's not rocket science, but it actually makes a big difference between a long-term injury and not.
Those tips, combined with Euro NCAP's research and improved seat design, should mean that injuries from whiplash start to fall. That'll be good news for us because fewer injuries will lead to fewer compensation claims and maybe cheaper car insurance as a result.
Meet the brand new Cayman. Porsche's mid-engine sports car has been rebuilt from the ground up. It's lighter, more powerful and more efficient than before. Today I'm testing 2 brand new Caymans so that I can settle a petrol-head pub debate.
These are mechanically identical apart from their transmissions. This has a manual gearbox, whereas this one has a double-clutch semi-automatic style. Now, a few years ago, we would have gone for the manual, because it's much more fun to drive. But these are getting better every day. So this could be the first car where people like us go for the semi-automatic version.
To help me find out which is best, I'm being joined by Finnish double World Rally champion Marcus Gronholm, a man with ice running through his veins. We're going to race the cars head-to-head in a 1-kilometre drag race and then over a flying lap. But first, we need to decide who drives what.
Marcus Gronholm, rallying legend. Double world champion, yeah?
Yep.
Which years?
2000 and 2002.
I can still see you've got that look in your eye, though.
Yes, it's there.
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we toss to see who gets to choose which car? So, heads or tails? Tails it is.
Oh.
I'm a generous man. I'm going to let you have the PDK.
Thank you.
Done.
Round 1.
Fancy a bit of this.
Porsche's semi-auto is called PDK and has 2 clutches, enabling the next gear to be pre-selected before you need it. That means faster changes than the manual and no interruption to the engine's power delivery.
Can you hear me at the finish line?
What's going on? Look at that! You could see that each gear change, he just edged away. Come on! Once we got up to, say, 80, 90 mile an hour, there was nothing between the cars. I hate losing!
The system is good and shifting is easy.
Ah!
Clearly, I was quicker there.
Well, I'll tell you what, Marcus, you can clearly see that PDK is a better gearbox, quicker, isn't it?
It's quicker. But then, when I got the speed up, you had no chance.
He talks a good game, this lad, doesn't he?
Yes.
Right, time for a race. We're going to remove the PDK's advantage off the line by having a flying start. We'll both drive as quickly as possible over 2 laps. If I'm beaten by a rally driver in an automatic, well, it'll be hell on.
Now, there is one benefit of having the manual, and that is the transmission is a lot simpler and therefore lighter, some 30 kilograms lighter. So in theory, this should handle, this manual car, a little bit better than the PDK. Drag race is one thing, but now we're going to get in my domain, on tarmac, on a track. 3, 2, 1, go!
Rolling start, yes, I was a little bit behind in the start.
Now, see, I've got the line here. I think I'll have that. I had the line for the first corner, but he had a slightly quicker car up through the gears. Oh, he's trying it on. Good lad.
In the second quarter, I overtook him then.
I tell you what, he knows how to drive a car, does that lad? Oh, he's a bit early on the brakes there. I've caught up. Right, he's left the gap for me. You're not coming through there, body lad.
I have to catch him.
And we're away. Tell you what, on the limit, these things, it's so beautifully balanced. A little bit of oversteer, nothing, no drama. Didn't really feel the need to correct it, and we've got him linked.
He's bloody quick.
Let's not make a mistake of these two.
he's a racing driver, so you need to be smooth and not rally style.
Little bit of showboats in there, show 'em how they do a bit of skidding and sliding.
I must win him.
And we got him beaten. Whoa, I'll have that as a win.
I let you win.
There's less than a second between them. Today has been a brilliant demonstration of each gearbox's qualities. The PDK is best for ultimate speed off the line, but over a lap, the manual is more involving and it's the gearbox that I would choose.
After the break, the destructive climax to Jonny's crash test special. Do you think you'll be safer in a van or a car?
Welcome back to Fifth Gear, where it's time for the violent climax to Jonny's exclusive look behind the scenes at 21st century crash technology.
We've seen the science behind crash tests, witnessed a Honda CRV meet a messy end, and revealed how you can protect yourselves from whiplash. But let's not forget that cars aren't the only vehicles on the road. In the UK right now, there are over 3.6 million of these. These are called vans. When was the last time you heard how safe they were? Chances are, you never really thought about it. Until now, vans have been an unknown quantity, but Euro NCAP has changed that. They've just finished conducting their first ever van crash tests, and the results are a bit shocking. 6 brand new models from Citroën, Fiat, Ford, Hyundai, Peugeot and Renault were put through their paces, all of which are available as family-friendly minibuses too. Only the Ford Transit managed a 5-star rating. The others couldn't beat a measly 3. But 2 million vans on the road are over 5 years old, and they're an entirely unknown quantity, which is why today I'm conducting a crash test of my own. This machine, a 12-year-old Vauxhall van, as used by countless tradesmen across the land, is going to hit that car down there, a VW Passat, head-on, both travelling at 40 miles per hour. Now, both vehicles are about the same age, both are structurally sound, and actually both were in regular use until yesterday. Euro NCAP gave the Passat 4 stars in 2001, but they've never tested the van. We're filling it with a typical payload, 1 tonne of sand, and installing our very own low-tech dummies to see what could happen to the people on board. Here on Fifth Gear, we quite like engines, so our winch system is a V8. This pickup here, 7.4 litre Chevy V8, 350 horsepower. It drives its back wheels, which in turn turn these wheels with the steel cable on a drum. That cable pulls both cars together to the point of impact, and the cable is bolted along the ground to make sure the cars don't veer off course. Just in case this lot gets a bit excited, we've decided to just get a little strap and hold it back with a little lorry. Well, you never know. With last-minute checks complete, we're ready to go. It's really weird, you get this horrible feeling inside your stomach.
Here we go, 10 seconds.
Because you know what's going to happen. If you drive a van, do not miss this.
3, 2, 1, action.
Here we go. Okay, here comes the van, here comes the Passat. I really didn't think it was going to be quite that loud. Are we good to go? Let's go and have a look, shall we? Oh, man.
Okay, it's a bit sandy. Hang on. So there's a lot of sand. On first impressions, the van driver doesn't look too bad. There's not been massive deformation of the dashboard. Both airbags have gone off, passenger and driver. This foot, I think, his left-hand foot's trapped. The van's obviously a heavier vehicle carrying a 1-ton load. So where they struck, which is about here, the van has overridden the car. It would have hit it and they carried on pushing it. The van's almost kind of consumed it and eaten it. Oh, man. It's definitely not going to polish out. Oh, it's freaky.
The van seems to have come out of the crash relatively well.
There's his hat. There's not been as much damage to the floor pan area as I would have thought.
But in the back, there's a nasty surprise waiting.
Whoa! Look at this. Look! So that was a fat, chubby bag sitting there, and it's now just flat up against here. And look how it's tried to break through the row of seats. This row of seats is no longer straight. It's now a chevron like this. I'm really shocked by this. It's horrendous. And that's the thing. Although there hasn't been a great deal of bodywork coming through onto the limbs there, he has had to absorb all this weight trying to go straight through the windscreen. And I think that's the thing to consider here. What I haven't seen with my eyes, that can kill you. It's not just the accident, it's what then follows through behind you. It's pretty obvious, but it's fair to say that I wouldn't want to be in either of these cars in an accident.
The experts at Euro NCAP have reviewed our footage and concluded that the driver of the van would probably have been fatally injured when his head and chest hit the steering wheel. Thanks to the car's airbag, its driver would have fared better. It's also a stark reminder that tools and other heavy equipment should always be tethered securely, even if there's a barrier between the back of the van and the front seats. In an accident, anything stored behind you can become a lethal weapon.
And Discovery's autumn of automotive action continues tomorrow night at 9 as the Wheeler dealers restore a Chevy Corvette Stingray. Next tonight, though, it's brand new Mythbusters.